Lucky American coins. The 1987 D Lincoln cent is one of the most interesting modern United States 1-cent coins to examine, especially when a collector finds an example with a genuine mint error or recognized die variety. At first glance, a 1987 D penny may look like an ordinary 1-cent coin, but the details of its date, Denver mint mark, condition, strike quality, surface preservation, and possible mint-made abnormalities can make a major difference in collector interest and value. It is important, however, to separate genuine numismatic facts from sensational claims that sometimes circulate online. A 1987 D Lincoln cent is not documented as being worth $271 million. Current authoritative auction and population information points to values dramatically below that figure for even exceptional examples. PCGS lists the regular 1987 D Lincoln cent with a recorded auction result of $12,000 for an MS-69 road example, while recognized 1987 D repunched mint mark examples have brought hundreds of dollars rather than millions. The 1987 D Lincoln cent was struck at the Denver Mint and carries the small letter D beneath the date on the obverse. The D identifies the Denver facility. The coin belongs to the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, which began in 1959 when the reverse of the Lincoln cent was changed from the original wheat ear design to a depiction of the Lincoln Memorial. The obverse retained the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner, while Frank Gasparro was responsible for the reverse design of the Lincoln Memorial. The 1987 D cent therefore represents an important part of the late 20th century Lincoln cent series and belongs to the era when American 1-cent pieces were made with a copper-plated zinc composition rather than the older bronze composition used before 1982. The standard 1987 D Lincoln cent has a diameter of approximately 19 millimeters and a standard weight of approximately 2.50 grams. Its composition is copper-plated zinc, with approximately 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. The thin copper layer gives the coin its familiar copper-colored appearance, even though the interior of the coin is primarily zinc. The edge is plain rather than reeded. These specifications are extremely useful when checking a suspected error, because an authentic normal coin should generally conform to the established dimensions and weight. PCGS records the 1987 D cent as a 19.00 mm, 2.50 gram copper-plated zinc coin. The total reported mintage for the 1987 D Lincoln cent was approximately 4,879,389,514 pieces. That is an enormous production figure. More than 4.8 billion coins were struck at Denver in that year, which is why the ordinary 1987 D cent is not considered a rare coin simply because it is from 1987. PCGS specifically describes the 1987 D Lincoln cent as very common because of this enormous production quantity. This point is extremely important for anyone making a video or article about the coin. The year 1987 alone does not make the penny worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The D mint mark alone does not make it rare. The fact that a coin is old enough to be several decades old does not automatically make it extremely valuable either. Collectors look at rarity, condition, variety, mint error status, provenance, authentication, and actual market demand. A normal circulated 1987 D cent generally remains close to face value, while uncirculated examples can command premiums depending on their grade and color designation. The obverse of the coin features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above Lincoln's portrait is the word Liberty, while the date 1987 appears on the right side of the portrait. The inscription I in God We Trust appears above the portrait. The Denver Mint mark D appears below the date area. On a normal example, these design elements should be properly positioned, sharply struck, and consistent with the dies used for the issue. The reverse features the Lincoln Memorial. Above the building is the denomination inscription United States of America, while the words E pluribus unum appear above the memorial. The denomination 1 cent is displayed below the building. The design is recognizable immediately to anyone familiar with American Lincoln cents of the period. The Lincoln Memorial reverse remained on the cent from 1959 through 2008, making the 1987 D cent part of a very long-running design era. One of the reasons the 1987 D cent can become interesting to collectors is the existence of recognized die varieties. A particularly notable variety is the 1987 D Lincoln cent repunched mint mark, designated FS 501. PCGS lists this variety among the recognized die varieties associated with the 1987 D cent. A repunched mint mark is different from a normal circulation scratch, stain, or damaged letter. During the era when mint marks were punched into working dies separately, a mint employee could punch the mint mark more than once. If the second punch was not perfectly aligned with the first, remnants of the earlier punch could remain visible. This produced a secondary outline or additional portion of the letter. Such a variety can be highly collectible because it represents a genuine event in the production of the die rather than damage that happened after the coin left the mint. The 1987 DFS 501 variety is especially interesting because the additional D elements can be seen around the main D mint mark. Great Collections describes the recognized FS 501 variety as having secondary D impressions associated with the primary mint mark. The important task for a collector is distinguishing a genuine repunched mint mark from mechanical damage, die deterioration, machine doubling, or other forms of apparent doubling. This distinction is critical because photographs on social media can make almost any unusual-looking mint mark appear to be a valuable error. A genuine die variety normally has characteristics that are consistent with how a die was manufactured and used. Post-mint damage, scratches, dents, polishing, chemical exposure, and circulation wear can create shapes that look like additional letters, but have no special numismatic value. The weight of a normal 1987 D cent is approximately 2.50 grams. A collector examining a suspected error should use a digital scale capable of measuring hundredths of a gram. Weight alone cannot prove that a coin is an error, but it can provide an important clue. For example, a significant deviation from the expected weight may suggest a planchette problem, missing plating, foreign material, or another unusual production characteristic. However, a low weight can also result from damage, corrosion, environmental exposure, or metal loss after the coin was struck. Therefore, weight should be considered together with physical evidence. Because 1987 D cents were made from copper-plated zinc, another interesting feature is the possibility of plating problems. The copper coating is extremely thin. If the plating is damaged, split, missing, or improperly bonded, the underlying zinc can become visible. Such conditions can sometimes attract collectors, but not every exposed zinc area is a valuable mint error. Corrosion and post-mint damage can produce similar appearances. Authentication is particularly important for dramatic claims. The color designation of a Lincoln cent can also influence value. Collectors commonly describe copper-colored Lincoln cents as brown, red-brown, or red, abbreviated BN, RB, and ROD respectively in many grading systems. A coin that has retained much of its original bright red color can be more desirable than a heavily toned or brown example, particularly at very high mint state grades. PCGS separately catalogues the 1987 D cent in BN, RB, and ROD categories. Condition is one of the most important factors in determining the value of a 1987 D Lincoln cent. A heavily circulated penny with scratches, discoloration, dents, and wear may be worth little more than face value. A sharply struck, nearly flawless mint state coin can be much more desirable. At the very highest grades, tiny imperfections become increasingly important. A coin that looks perfect to the naked eye may still receive a lower professional grade because of microscopic marks, weak strike characteristics, spots, or surface disturbances. PCGS reports that uncirculated 1987 D cents are abundant through approximately MS67, while examples at MS68 become much scarcer, and higher grades are considerably more difficult to find. This illustrates why condition can create a large price difference even within the same date and mint mark. A regular 1987 D cent in ordinary circulated condition is therefore not a $271 million coin. The number $271 million should not be presented as an established market price unless a legitimate auction record or recognized transaction supports it. At present, the available authoritative information does not support such a valuation. PCGS records an auction result of $12,000 for a 1987 DMS 69 road, and that is already an unusually high result for this issue. The difference between $271 million and $12,000 is enormous. A claim of $271 million would imply a price over 22,000 times larger than the documented $12,000 auction record. Extraordinary prices require extraordinary evidence. If someone claims that a common modern Lincoln cent sold for $271 million, the claim should be checked against a major auction house, a recognized grading service, and a verifiable sale record. Without such evidence, it is better to describe the amount as an unverified internet claim rather than a current market value. This does not mean that errors are unimportant. Quite the opposite. Genuine mint errors and recognized die varieties can transform an ordinary-looking cent into an exciting collectible. The key is identifying exactly what happened to the coin during manufacture. A major off-center strike, for example, can be much more interesting than a minor strike imperfection. An off-center coin occurs when the planchette is not properly positioned relative to the dies when the strike takes place. The resulting design is shifted, leaving part of the planchette blank. The greater the degree of off-centering, the more dramatic the error may appear. The date and mint mark remaining visible can also be important because they allow the coin to be identified easily. Broad strikes are another type of striking error. A broad strike can occur when a coin is struck outside the normal collar arrangement, allowing the metal to spread differently from a standard coin. The resulting shape can be noticeably wider or flatter than a normal cent. Again, authentication matters because damage occurring after minting can sometimes imitate unusual shapes. A clipped planchette is another possible error category. This happens when the blanking process removes a portion of the metal improperly, producing a curved or otherwise distinctive missing section. A genuine clipped planchette can show characteristics that help distinguish it from a coin that was deliberately cut, filed, or damaged after leaving the mint. A struck-through error occurs when foreign material becomes involved between the die and planchette during striking. The resulting coin may have an area where the design is missing, distorted, or unusually textured. Depending on the material involved and the visual quality of the error, collectors may have considerable interest in the piece. Die cracks and die breaks can also produce unusual lines or raised areas on coins. A die crack occurs when the die develops a crack that transfers to the coins it strikes. As the die deteriorates, the crack can become more prominent. A dramatic die break may produce a raised area that collectors sometimes call a cud. These are genuine die-produced characteristics, but they should not automatically be described as extremely rare or worth millions. Machine doubling is another area where inexperienced collectors can make mistakes. Machine doubling can create a secondary-looking edge on letters, numbers, or design elements, but it is not the same as a true doubled die. A genuine doubled die is created during die production, while machine doubling occurs during the striking process through movement or mechanical interaction. The market generally treats these phenomena differently. The 1987 DFS 501 repunched mint mark is especially useful as an educational example because it demonstrates how a small detail can matter. Great Collections reports examples of this recognized variety selling for prices ranging from approximately $66 to $394 in grades around MS63 to MS66, while PCGS lists an auction record of $1,800 for an MS67 road example of the variety. Those figures are vastly more realistic than a $271 million claim. They show how a recognized variety can carry a meaningful premium without becoming a multimillion-dollar coin. The exact price depends on grade, color designation, eye appeal, certification, buyer demand, and the circumstances of the sale. One auction archive also records a 1987 DFS 501 example in 58 billion Australian dollars selling for $149.62. Another recorded MS65 road example sold for $376.88, while an MS66 road example sold for $393.75. These sales demonstrate that the market recognizes the variety, but values it according to actual rarity and condition rather than sensational claims. A collector examining a suspected 1987 D error should begin with the date and mint mark. Make sure the coin actually reads 1987 and that the mint mark is D. Then inspect the mint mark under magnification. A 5x to 10x loop can be useful. Examine the edges of the D carefully and look for a secondary impression that has a logical shape and position. Random scratches, flattening, corrosion, or discoloration should not be mistaken for a repunched mint mark. Next, examine the surfaces of the coin. Look for evidence that an unusual feature was created during striking rather than after the coin entered circulation. Raised features are often more promising than random incuse scratches, but even that distinction is not enough by itself. A professional attribution may be required. The reverse should also be examined carefully. Look at the Lincoln Memorial, lettering, denomination, and surrounding fields. Search for major doubling, die cracks, plating abnormalities, strike-throughs, clipped areas, or other unusual features. Compare the coin with photographs of authenticated examples whenever possible. The edge should be inspected as well. Although the standard 1987 D cent has a plain edge, the edge can provide evidence of certain errors or damage. An off-center strike, broad strike, or other unusual production event may leave clues along the rim. However, filing, grinding, cutting, squeezing, or other post-mint alterations can also change the edge. A magnet is not a reliable primary test for identifying a normal 1987 D cent. Zinc is not strongly magnetic, and the copper plating does not make the coin behave like a conventional steel coin. The better initial tests are weight, diameter, visual examination, and professional authentication when appropriate. It is also important to understand that the 1987 D cent is not a silver penny. Its normal composition is copper-plated zinc. Claims that ordinary 1987 D cents contain valuable amounts of silver or precious metal should be treated with skepticism. The coin's intrinsic metal value is not responsible for the major premiums associated with genuine varieties or exceptional grades. The history of the Lincoln cent itself adds to the appeal of the 1987 D issue. Lincoln first appeared on the U.S. cent in 1909, making the series one of the longest-running portrait coin designs in American history. In 1959, the reverse changed to the Lincoln Memorial to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The 1987 D cent therefore belongs to a period when the memorial reverse had already been in use for almost 3 decades. The 1987 coin was produced during a period when the United States Mint was striking enormous quantities of cents for everyday commerce. The cent was needed for transactions, vending, cash registers, and general circulation. Consequently, billions of coins were produced. This massive production is one of the reasons the normal 1987 D cent is plentiful today. The word liberty on the obverse represents an enduring principle of American national identity. In God We Trust appears above Lincoln, while the portrait itself connects the denomination with one of the most historically significant American presidents. The reverse memorial design visually connects the cent to the nation's capital and to the physical memorial honoring Lincoln. The Denver D mint mark is an important part of the coin's identity. In coin collecting, mint marks can dramatically influence rarity because different facilities may produce different quantities of the same date. But a mint mark does not automatically mean rarity. In 1987, Denver produced nearly 4.88 billion Lincoln cents, so the 1987 D issue is a clear example of a coin where the mint mark must be considered alongside production totals and condition. When discussing value, it is useful to think in several categories rather than one sensational number. A circulated ordinary 1987 D cent may have little premium over 1 cent. A high-grade uncirculated example can be worth more. A very high-grade red example can command substantially more. A recognized repunched mint mark can bring another premium. A dramatic, authenticated mint error can potentially command a much larger amount depending on the error and its rarity. Current published price information shows just how strongly grade can affect the regular issue. One compiled market guide lists approximate values ranging from only a few dollars in lower mint state grades to substantially higher amounts for exceptional MS-68 and MS-69 red pieces, while PCGS records the $12,000 auction result for an MS-69 road example. The term MS means mint state. A coin graded MS-60 or higher has no wear from circulation in the technical grading sense, although it can still have marks, spots, weak areas, or other imperfections. Higher grades represent increasingly strong preservation. MS-65 is much more demanding than MS-60, and MS-68, or MS-69, is extraordinarily demanding for a modern coin. The red designation, road, is also important because copper coins naturally change color over time. Original red color can be attractive to collectors, particularly when the coin has remained protected from oxidation and environmental exposure. A bright red coin with excellent surfaces and a high numerical grade can be significantly more desirable than a dull or heavily toned example. A coin should never be cleaned in an attempt to increase its value. Cleaning can leave hairlines, unnatural brightness, or other evidence of surface alteration. Professional graders may classify a cleaned coin differently from an original example, and improper cleaning can reduce collector appeal. If a 1987 D cent appears valuable because of its condition or error, preserving it in its existing state is generally safer than trying to improve its appearance with household chemicals or polishing materials. Storage is also important. Copper-plated zinc cents can react to moisture and environmental contaminants. A coin suspected of being rare should be kept in a suitable holder and protected from unnecessary handling. Touching the surfaces repeatedly can transfer oils and contaminants from the fingers. Hold collectible coins by the edges whenever possible. If a suspected error appears valuable, professional grading and attribution can provide important documentation. Services such as PCGS and NGC can authenticate and grade coins, while recognized variety specialists and auction archives can help establish market history. A certified coin with a clearly attributed variety can be easier for collectors to evaluate than an uncertified coin accompanied only by a seller's claim. A major warning sign is any advertisement claiming that a normal 1987 D penny is automatically worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Online videos and posts sometimes use enormous dollar figures to attract attention. Such claims may confuse a hypothetical valuation, an insurance number, a fake listing, an unsold asking price, or a sensational headline with an actual market transaction. An asking price is not the same as a sale price. The phrase current market value should therefore be used carefully. A genuine market value should be supported by comparable sales. If a coin is advertised for $271 million, but nobody has actually purchased it for anything close to that amount, the advertisement does not establish a $271 million market value. For a 1987 D Lincoln cent, the documented evidence gives a much more realistic picture. The ordinary coin is common because billions were produced. High-grade specimens can be collectible. The recognized 1987 DFS 501 repunched mint mark can be significantly more interesting. Exceptional mint state examples can command substantial premiums. But there is no reliable evidence that an ordinary 1987 D cent, or the recognized FS 501 variety, has a market value of $271 million. This distinction can actually make a coin video more credible. Instead of telling viewers that every 1987 D penny is worth $271 million, a collector-focused presentation can explain that the coin is common in its normal form, but that certain varieties and errors deserve close examination. That approach gives viewers useful information, while still creating excitement around the possibility of finding something unusual. A good search strategy is to examine the mint mark first, then the date, then the entire obverse and reverse under magnification. Compare unusual features with trusted references. If the coin appears to have a recognized variety, photograph it clearly under good lighting. Avoid excessive digital enhancement, because software can create artificial-looking doubling that does not exist on the actual coin. The weight should be recorded to 2 decimal places if possible. The diameter can be checked with a suitable measuring device. If the coin is dramatically outside normal specifications, further investigation may be justified. But a small variation should not automatically be considered proof of an error because scales, dirt, corrosion, plating loss, and normal production tolerances can affect measurements. The coin's condition should be evaluated separately from the error. An error on a heavily circulated coin may be worth less than a comparable error on an exceptionally preserved coin. Conversely, a spectacular and rare mint error can remain valuable even when the coin has circulation wear. The relationship between rarity and condition is not identical for every error type. Provenance can also influence collector confidence. A coin that has been certified and sold through established auction channels has a documented history. This is particularly important when very large values are claimed. The higher the claimed value, the stronger the evidence should be. The 1987 D Lincoln cent also demonstrates why collectors should learn the difference between an error, a variety, and damage. A mint error is generally an unintended production mistake involving the planchette, die, striking process, or other minting stage. A die variety results from a characteristic of the die itself, such as a repunched mint mark. Damage happens after production and generally does not have the same numismatic significance. The 1987 DFS 501 is best discussed as a recognized die variety rather than casually labeling every unusual D as a rare error. This terminology matters because collectors use standardized descriptions to communicate precisely about coins. Great Collections identifies the FS 501 as a recognized repunched mint mark variety and notes that it is listed in the Cherry Picker's Guide to Rare Die Varieties of United States Coins. Another important point is that not every doubled-looking feature is valuable. The coin should be compared against known examples. Genuine varieties often have repeatable diagnostics that can be seen on multiple examples from the same die. Random damage usually lacks these consistent characteristics. If a person finds a 1987 D cent with a suspected double D, the best course is not to immediately sell it for an enormous amount or assume it is a millionaire coin. Instead, preserve the coin, document its measurements and appearance, compare it with authenticated FS 501 examples, and seek professional attribution if the evidence looks convincing. The same principle applies to suspected off-center strikes. A small shift may have only modest collector interest, while a dramatic off-center strike with a fully visible date and mint mark may be much more desirable. The market depends on the exact characteristics of the error. The same applies to missing plating. A zinc-colored area can be interesting, but the collector should determine whether it represents a genuine plating error or simply environmental damage. Zinc exposed to the environment can deteriorate, and damaged copper plating can peel or discolor after circulation. Photographs alone can sometimes be misleading. The 1987 D cent's historical significance does not come from being an extremely rare date. Instead, its importance comes from being part of the enormous Lincoln cent series and from providing opportunities to study modern minting technology, copper-plated zinc composition, die varieties, high-grade preservation, and mint errors. The coin's standard value of 1 cent is its legal face value. Numismatic value is separate. A collector may pay more because a coin is rare, attractive, unusually well preserved, or contains a recognized error. The difference between face value and collector value is the foundation of coin collecting. For example, a normal circulated 1987 D penny might remain essentially a 1-cent coin. A certified high-grade red example can be worth substantially more. A recognized 1987 DFS 501 can bring hundreds of dollars in suitable grades. PCGS has recorded a $1,800 auction result for an MS-67 Road FS 501 example. Meanwhile, the regular issue's documented $12,000 auction result at MS-69 Road shows that the upper end can be surprisingly strong for an otherwise common modern cent when the grade is exceptional. But that is still nowhere near $271 million. This is why coin collectors should focus on evidence rather than sensational numbers. The excitement should come from the possibility of finding a genuine variety, a rare error, or an exceptional condition coin. A 1987 D cent found in pocket change is unlikely to be worth a fortune, but a coin with a real recognized variety deserves a closer look. The market can also change over time. Auction prices fluctuate depending on collector demand, certification population, appeal, timing, venue, and the specific characteristics of an individual specimen. A single auction record should not automatically be interpreted as the guaranteed value of every coin of the same date and mint mark. For anyone searching rolls of 1987 D cents, the best strategy is to save coins that show unusual characteristics and compare them carefully. High-quality examples with strong original color are worth separating from heavily circulated pieces. Coins with unusual mint marks, major off-centering, strong die cracks, clipped planches, or other apparent production abnormalities deserve further examination. A magnifying glass or loupe is useful, but lighting is equally important. Tilt the coin slowly under a light source rather than relying on one straight-on photograph. Raised and recessed features can become easier to distinguish when light moves across the surface. Photographs should be taken without excessive filters. The date, mint mark, suspected error, and entire coin should all be visible. For a suspected FS 501, close-up photographs of the D mint mark are especially useful. The historical story behind Lincoln also adds educational value to the coin. Lincoln's portrait has appeared on the cent for more than a century, making the penny one of the most recognizable American coins. The memorial reverse was used for generations, and millions of Americans handled these coins without realizing that individual pieces could later become objects of numismatic study. The 1987 D cent is a snapshot of American coin production during the late 20th century. It reflects the transition to copper-plated zinc, the continued mass production of the 1 cent denomination, and the continuing popularity of the Lincoln series. Its copper-plated zinc composition also makes it physically different from older Lincoln cents. Collectors should not assume that the reddish appearance means the entire coin is copper. The outer layer is copper, but the core is zinc. This distinction becomes especially important when examining damaged plating or unusual surfaces. The 1987 D cent is therefore valuable as a learning tool even when it has no major monetary premium. It teaches collectors how mint marks work, how die varieties develop, how coin composition affects appearance, how grading influences value, and how genuine auction evidence differs from online speculation. If a collector owns a 1987 D cent and believes it might be worth $271 million, the most responsible conclusion is that the claim needs verification before any such value is accepted. The available evidence does not support that price. A legitimate valuation would require a specific coin, an identified variety or era, authentication, professional grading where appropriate, and comparable market transactions. The documented information gives us a much clearer range of possibilities. A common circulated coin can be worth around face value. Ordinary uncirculated examples may bring modest premiums. Exceptional high-grade red specimens can be substantially more valuable. The recognized 1987 DFS 501 variety can bring hundreds of dollars, and, in an exceptional certified grade, has reached a documented $1,800 auction result. A regular MS-69 road example has a recorded $12,000 auction result. Those numbers are the kind of figures collectors can actually investigate. They can be traced to grading records and auction histories rather than simply repeated from a sensational headline. The most valuable lesson is that a coin should never be judged solely by its year. The year is only one part of the identification. The mint mark, variety, era, grade, color, strike, surfaces, and authenticity all matter. Two 1987 D pennies can look almost identical at first glance, while having very different collector values, because one has an identifiable variety, and the other does not. The same applies to two coins with the same variety. One may be heavily circulated and damaged, while the other may be a brilliant certified mint state specimen. Their prices can be very different. For this reason, anyone creating educational content about the 1987 D Lincoln cent should emphasize that worth big money depends on what is actually present on the coin. A genuine mint era can be exciting. A recognized repunched mint mark can be collectible. A top-grade red specimen can be valuable. But an ordinary 1987 D cent is not automatically a rare treasure. The $271 million figure should therefore be treated as a sensational claim rather than a verified current market price. There is no reliable evidence in the cited market records establishing a $271 million sale of a 1987 D Lincoln cent. The documented record is dramatically lower, with PCGS reporting $12,000 for a regular MS-69 road example and recognized FS 501 repunched mint mark example selling in the hundreds of dollars to a documented $1,800 for an MS-67 road specimen. That does not make the 1987 D penny boring. In fact, it makes the search more realistic and more interesting. The real treasure is finding the exact characteristic that separates a common coin from a collectible one. A coin pulled from a jar, bank roll, old collection, or box of change could potentially deserve examination if it has an unusual mint mark, dramatic striking error, or exceptional preservation. Collectors should also remember that online coin prices can include asking prices rather than completed sales. A seller can list a penny for almost any amount. That does not mean a buyer will pay it. Completed auction results are generally more useful when determining market behavior. Professional certification can also protect buyers and sellers from misunderstandings. A recognized grading service can verify authenticity and assign a grade. For a rare variety, attribution can provide an additional layer of confidence. Ultimately, the 1987 D Lincoln cent is a classic example of why modern coin collecting requires careful observation. Its enormous mintage means the ordinary coin is common, but its recognized die varieties and possible mint errors create opportunities for collectors. The coin weighs approximately 2.50 grams, measures about 19 millimeters across, has a copper-plated zinc composition, carries the Denver D mint mark, and belongs to the Lincoln Memorial Cent era. The design connects two major American figures in numismatic history, Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and Victor David Brenner, as the original designer of Lincoln's portrait, with Frank Gasparro associated with the Lincoln Memorial reverse. The coin's design, specifications, and production history make it easy to identify, while its potential varieties give advanced collectors something more challenging to investigate. If you find one, start with the basics. Confirm 1987. Confirm D, check the weight. Inspect the mint mark. Examine the date. Look across the portrait and lettering for genuine doubled characteristics. Inspect the reverse for major die anomalies. Check the edge. Look for plating problems. Compare what you see with authenticated references. Do not clean the coin. Do not scratch it to test it. Do not assume an enormous price from a social media post. If the evidence is strong, have the coin professionally evaluated. The most realistic conclusion is that a normal 1987 D Lincoln cent is generally a common modern penny, while special varieties and exceptional examples can be worth considerably more. PCGS's data confirms the huge mintage and the existence of the FS 501 repunched mintmark variety, and documented sales show that condition and variety can produce meaningful premiums. So, if someone tells you that every 1987 D penny is worth $271 million, that statement should immediately raise questions. If someone tells you that a specific 1987 D penny has a genuine repunched mint mark, an extraordinary mint error, or an exceptional MS grade, that is a claim worth investigating. The difference is evidence. The 1987 D Lincoln cent remains an interesting collectible because it combines a common date with the possibility of unusual die varieties and minting characteristics. It is a reminder that valuable coins are not always identified by their age alone. Sometimes the important clue is a tiny detail beneath the date, a dramatic shift in the strike, an unusual planchet, a rare die characteristic, or an exceptional state of preservation. The coin's official denomination is 1 cent, but its numismatic story can be much larger than its face value. For a collector, the real excitement is not simply seeing a giant dollar figure attached to a penny. It is discovering exactly why one particular specimen is different from the billions of ordinary coins that came out of the Denver Mint in 1987. And that is what makes the 1987 D Lincoln cent worth checking carefully. Its enormous production of 4,879,389,514 pieces means that rarity cannot be assumed from the date alone, yet the recognized D repunched mintmark variety and exceptional high-grade examples demonstrate that individual coins can still become desirable collectibles. A collector who understands the difference between a normal coin, a die variety, a true mint error, and post-mint damage has a much better chance of identifying something genuinely interesting. The best approach is patience, magnification, accurate weighing, comparison with trusted references, and professional authentication when the evidence warrants it. The 1987 D Lincoln cent should therefore be viewed as a coin with real collecting potential in specific circumstances, not as a guaranteed $271 million rarity. The documented market evidence supports a much more measured valuation, with the strongest known examples and recognized varieties reaching thousands rather than hundreds of millions of dollars. That distinction is essential for accurate coin collecting information, and for anyone hoping to determine whether a 1987 D penny in their possession deserves further investigation.